So in the magical world of actions, you don't care that A was pressed. You care that Mario jumped. And let me just make sure. Yeah, there's some other stuff I was going to say. The back end's completely responsible for talking to your input device and just doing the right thing. And your game doesn't care at all about raw input. And this is the heart of the Steam Controller API and the kind of revolutionary thing it does. And it's the hardest thing for developers to wrap their heads around because they're always like, how do I activate the gyro? How do I, get this physical thing on the thing? You want to think and design your game entirely around actions and not about inputs. And in Steam Controller API, it's very important because you don't see inputs ever. You see actions. And actions come in two flavors. They come in digital and they come in analog. And I've highlighted the digital inputs on this controller. These generate digital actions, and the red generate analog actions. You've got the touchpads, you've got the stick. Here are your face buttons, here are your grip controls, your shoulder buttons, your analog triggers, and internally you have this gyro sensor. You can't see, but it's inside the device. And I should mention that most analog inputs also have digital output modes. So you can turn either of these trackpads basically into a glorified D-pad, and it will send digital information. Same with the stick. And these also are like GameCube controllers, where they have a digital click at the end of that analog pull. So, getting back to the dead horse that I'm going to beat quite thoroughly before this talk is over, you don't get direct input when you're using the Steam Controller API. You only get actions. There is this, between your game and your controller, you're not seeing a button push. What you're seeing is that the Steam Controller sends the A button event to the Steam API, and the Steam API sends the jump action if that's what you've got it configured for. So the player has almost complete control over what inputs do what actions. That's in the player's hands. Now you have two ways to exert control as a developer. You define what the actions are, and you group them into action sets. That's one. And then two is you provide an official configuration. So for instance, when I was prepping this talk, people say, how do I activate the gyro? And you don't. Someone could bind the gyro control to aim, and you would get the aim command. You would define that aim is a command, aim is an action, and aim is analog. And one thing I also want to make clear about analog versus digital is just yes, no. Is this state currently active? Analog is yes, no, is this active, and here's your X float, and here's your Y float. Or just one of those if it's a digital trigger. So also, the player controls whether it's inverted, the axis. They control whether there's acceleration, whether it acts like a trackball. Like all that little fiddly stuff is in the hands of the player, not you. Now you can do some post-processing on your analog inputs or whatever after the fact, but you should know that all of the little fiddly stuff is in the hand of the player. And we believe that's a good thing.